Welcome to Heads Up HR, the podcast from QuestCover, bringing you the latest HR insights, legislation updates, and practical advice to keep your business compliant and your people supported. No jargon, no stress, just advice you can actually use, and the chance to be part of a workplace community that's learning and growing together. Hello again, welcome back to Heads Up HR, the new podcast from QuestCover. I'm once again joined by my co-host Miles Day. Hello Miles, how are you?
Hi Barry, very well, thank you.
So do you know what we're covering today on the podcast?
Absence management?
Sickness, absence management, absolutely. So we're covering what it means for businesses, why it's tricky, and how to handle it without losing your mind, which is all too easy to do when dealing with employees being sick.
Absolutely.
So we're talking more kind of about the long-term sickness. We've had a lot of short-term sickness going around the office recently. I myself am recovering from a head cold that I had last week. You can probably still hear it a little bit in my voice.
Just a little bit. A little bit Kermit Frog, but
a little
not
bit.
Too bad.
I won't do my impression quite yet, but absolutely. So we're talking more about the long-term sickness absence management. It's an issue that we encounter a lot on our advice line, an issue that our business partners deal with a lot as well. I think it's something that a lot of businesses do struggle with. Is that something you find in your experience, Miles?
Absolutely. It's one of the major issues that comes up during the one-to-one compliance reviews that we carry out, and advisors do raise it regularly. And it's very, very difficult for an employer to manage because on one hand, you've got the needs of the business, you've got to get deliveries out, you've got to make sure that customers don't appreciate their order not coming because Dave hasn't come to work. It doesn't work that way. You've still got to get the work done. You've still got to get achieve your targets. And yet, long-term absence especially can have a direct impact on how a business performs over a year and the outcomes that business can achieve. So yeah, absolutely. It's a consistent challenge for businesses out there. And I think there's a statistic that
I've got the statistics.
Have you got them there?
I've got the actual statistics. You don't need to paraphrase any statistics, but I've got them. Yeah. So we recently actually did a webinar on sickness absence management, I think back in August, covering that. And as part of that, our director, Hema Mystery, she covered some of the recent statistics for sickness absence management. And I brought them here because I was quite shocked by them at the time. I know that it's always quite a high figure anyway, but so I've got the figures here. The HSC reported that in 2022 to 23, there were 35.2 million working days lost for work-related ill health in the UK. In the year 2023 to 24, that's an estimated 33.7 million as well. So only marginally less, but still quite a staggering number of work days lost. That's a lot of productivity lost, a lot of things like that. And of those, 25 million of those 35.2 million working days were lost directly due to stress, anxiety and depression, not strictly due to just the workload. It can be external influences as well, but that's a vast majority of them due to stress, anxiety and depression. So in terms of those cases, it is very much kind of that, as you were saying, that balancing act, and it always is that balancing act with any HR issue between the needs of the business and the needs of the employee. The employee needs to feel supported in order to be able to feel prepared to come back to work if that's the case.
Exactly right. So there's two key areas really. You've got to make sure that you manage, monitor and record your activity with any employee on any matter, but especially absence. And also, on the other side of things, make sure that you're supporting that individual with whatever they're dealing with. It doesn't necessarily have to involve the business directly, but have the facility in place, which we can support you with, for them to have confidential support and gain some kind of counselling support if needed. Very, very important that you do both. Don't do one and leave the other. They work hand in hand. Very often when we deal with things and it's gone further, it's because some key elements have been missed. There's a duty of care, and then there's also following the correct steps and insisting on employees dealing with issues.
And I think the steps is the key part of it, and following the steps, because I think it's all too easy when you yourself are starting to see some kind of pattern in repeated absence to kind of cast that judgment before you've even had the discussion, or to bring that in to approach an initial discussion in kind of an accusatory way. And I think that's kind of the struggle that managers have, is having to kind of approach it with a fair and unbiased perspective. Even if you feel like you know what's going on, it's on you as the employer to make that put that question to the employee themselves and hear the answer from their mouth.
So important not to prejudge. Sorry to cut across you, but
absolutely.
Important not to prejudge.
So you mentioned about supporting employees who are facing, these kind of issues with stress and anxiety and things like that. What ways can a business support their employees with those things?
So probably the most important one that we find that we recommend to all businesses is an employee assistance program. In effect, it's giving an opportunity for confidential support either online or by phone to experienced counsellors who we partner with a company called CIC, a fantastic business. We have it in place for ourselves, for our own staff. HR and health and safety management can be very, very stressful for our staff as well. And as such, their team are fantastic. They'll give initial advice, and then when they feel as though there's extra support needed, there's also up to 6 counselling sessions built in, so it can be more advanced support, one-to-one support, where they can go and see someone and then try to work through the issues. And it's also available to their family members as well.
Yeah, it's not just purely about employment. It's also about any kind of issues, because external issues do come into the workplace. If you're having a problem at home, it affects your mood and your output at work. And
it's so difficult for an employee when they're going through a divorce or dealing with financial difficulties or whatever it may be. Are you going to bring that to anybody? I regularly say this in one-to-ones. We all wear a little bit of a mask at work. And as such, and that's natural. We all paint our best picture. We've all got things that we're all dealing with. There is a duty of care on the health and safety side that you provide some kind of mental health support to your staff. Most businesses don't, or don't understand that that's even a responsibility.
I think because there is kind of a current movement towards more mental health first aiders in workplaces, but for a lot of businesses, having the resources to train those people or hire those people in isn't necessarily attainable. So a employee assistance program, like you've said, can benefit in that way.
I think the difficulty with that as well, and it's I'll absolutely support anybody that goes down that route, but are you going to go to a work colleague? Are you comfortable going to a work colleague? No. Do you know where the information is going to go after you've spoken to that work colleague? It's really important that you kind of look at other options as well. I would recommend that you have it in place, but also maybe put another layer there as well, that if somebody wants to keep it confidential, they can.
And it is that kind of initial support that you say, for more serious issues, you would be signposted to the right kind of support network for that. But it's sounds like a good way of kind of keeping on top of that issue as it's emerging, to try and get that support and push out that support. And it's about that consistently. It's all well and good kind of introducing an employee assistance program to a business, but you need to signpost to it as well.
It's huge. Absolutely, it's huge. We get a regular message at our place. It comes through monthly. Everybody gets it across the business. You have access to it. If you want to look at your emails at home, jump on it, get the support that you need, log in. It's totally confidential. As a management team, you will never know who has used the service. You will obviously get information about what it's been used for, because that can be of a concern to a business if there are certain areas that are always flagging. But you will never ever see that Dave has called about X. That
absolutely.
Won't happen.
So then, to flip it onto the other side, we mentioned obviously supporting the employees, but also protecting the business. One of the key and most important things to do with any HR process, but especially with sickness absence management, is that the tracking of it. And part of being able to detect if there's a pattern is you need to be able to track it, to visualize see if there's a pattern. You need to be able to see it visually. So do you have any advice or guidance for people on how best to approach the tracking side of absences? Is it something that should be done kind of consistently from the start, or do you only kind of start looking deeper into that when you've started noticing a pattern?
From day one, record all activity with staff. Really important, right from... And it's really important how you set up your policies as well. So things like, how does somebody report sick? Do they send a text message? We don't recommend that. We recommend get them to pick the phone up, make sure that they have a conversation with you. Do they need to do it every day? Again, we'd recommend that. And then record what's been said in those conversations and record the duration of time that they've been off, and then as it goes further, and that you start to see a pattern, like you said, after recording it on. We provide an employee management system that's fantastic because it's cloud-based. Staff can book their holidays, sickness. You can record the sickness through it. You can record all of the documentation movements that you're going to need when you're dealing with a long-term absence. The system will track that through, so that should you, heaven forbid, ever have to present it anywhere, you can. The pattern would be show, but also what you've done about it and how you've managed it, and that should be reflected in your documentation at the front end. So absolutely very, very important that you have some kind of system in place. Get a lot of people saying, oh, we've got it on Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Does it go into enough detail? Does it show that actually this absence is now triggered some kind of meeting? What was the meeting outcome? Where were the notes? Much better if it's all in one place so you can see the journey.
Yeah.
And that's why we built it. We built it ourselves. It's ours. We're very proud of it. And so as such, and we keep developing it. We keep moving it forward.
And we use it ourselves.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we know it works.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? Because even when employers have to, they know, they're aware they have to track these things. But just because you're tracking it in a way that is understandable to you, doesn't mean it's the way it needs to be for if it goes to a tribunal case, for example, where you have to provide evidence to them. It may not work for those purposes. So it's a tricky one, and it is something that is really important to get right.
It starts at the front end with your policies that are implementing, and then you're enforcing your policies that should then flow through, and what you've implemented in your policies should flow through into your processes. Lost my teeth.
Didn't flow through with that.
Flow through into your processes that you carry out.
Yeah. So I think the only other kind of statistic from Hemma's webinar that she did in August was that more about senior leaders. For example, it says CIPD reported that 2 out of 3 senior leaders, 2/3 of senior leaders, take wellbeing very seriously within the business. However, they did also note that there's a lack of line manager skill and confidence in navigating these situations. It's important that it's not just the big dog at the top who knows what needs to be done and knows how important it is. It's important that that's trickled down through to lower levels of management as well.
Deal with this regularly. So we have a phone call to the advice line. We have an employee who's been off several times. Oh, okay, what does that look like? Well, his manager's actually just spoken to him 2 or 3 times about making sure that he phones in. Has it been recorded? Well, we've recorded it a couple of times, but it's actually been 4 or 5 times. Those incidents, it didn't exist unless you've got a trackable history. It's very much manager to employee. So really, really important. You're totally right. Really, really important that your management team are confident in the HR information that they're translating to staff. We always recommend some kind of training. It's something that we do. We do HR for non-HR managers, which kind of gives more context to how you deal with something. Yeah. Instead of, I've read a policy, so now I've got to do a policy. I've read the policy and I'm trained enough to be able to manage this process. Yeah. Policy will only give you so much. The written word. The rest is all about how you do it. Yeah. And that's probably where, and certainly a lot of SMEs, the sort of, when I talk about SMEs, and I always have to qualify this, I'm not talking about those of you out there that are 15, 20 million plus. I'm talking about those of you that are 500,000 turnover, lower or high or slightly higher, up to £1 million. Those ones that have 7, 8, 15, 20, 30 staff, which is where we help so much. Those people invariably are just trying to get the work out, just trying to make sure things get done. And their management teams have that same mentality and philosophy. But you do need to make sure you protect the business. Yeah. Because a tribunal will eat an awful lot of your bottom line if you do find yourself in a bad situation and having to either settle or facing a big award because you've just not handled the processes correctly. So.
Yeah. And it's not until it kind of gets to that point that a lot of people would realise that. We do actually have, moving on to a user submitted question.
Oh wow!
I think we've probably covered the guidance for it already, but I'll pose the question to you and we'll see if it sparks anything new from you. But so this is a question we've had in. It says, we've noticed that a few employees are taking frequent short-term sick days and it's starting to impact the rest of the team. How should we approach this without seeming unsympathetic or accusatory?
Welfare, initially welfare meetings to kind of look at where and why. And if there is a pattern, talk about the pattern. Say
so you would approach that. So
yeah, absolutely. You can have that conversation.
Hemmer referred to it in the webinar as Mondayitis or Fridayitis, where people are off a lot of the time on Fridays. I've had it in previous jobs where there was a employee who had frequent days off for match days for their team, for their football team. So
it's similar. I come from a family business background, as you know. We had a security guard in business, and we had a guy who would regularly, it worked out to every third Friday, he would be absent from his role with us.
Yeah.
There was multiple different reasons, not just sickness. There was sickness, but then there was also childcare, etc. But we noticed that it was every third Friday.
Yeah.
And it turned out he's working somewhere else that were paying him double the money, but actually it was only one shift every 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So off he goes to earn that extra money. We were then able, when he admitted that, we were able to say, well, look, that can't happen. You either work for us or you work for them.
Yeah.
They'd only got one shift available. But it's exactly right. If we hadn't identified that pattern, we were going to be just dealing with that absence on a consistent basis.
So I suppose you would probably approach the pattern that you suspect and kind of broach it in a way that, I've noticed this.
There seems to be a consistent every third Friday. Is there any reason what's happening? It seems to be, when you talk about it to us, there seems to be different reasons. But as a business, we need to be able to understand why this keeps happening. And then, lo and behold, we were told. So, and that's usually the route that ends up happening.
Yeah. And then I think as well, it also depends on those kind of arrangements. Obviously, it can go that way and you can say that it doesn't work. But if there is something where they have a consistent thing they need to attend, regardless of what it is, you can also kind of do flexible working arrangements. They're more popular, more common now, or reasonable adjustments to a working pattern.
Yeah, but it all starts with that establishment. That initial, and again, manage, monitor, record.
Yeah.
Broken record, manage, monitor, record, because invariably you don't want a situation where there's I didn't say that. Yes, I did.
Yeah.
You need to be clear as to that. You need to establish this and
what exactly was said in the meeting.
Exactly.
What was covered.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what the outcome of that meeting is or will be.
And most employers, I keep saying it, most employers will, if they have a valued member of staff, will make adjustments if it's possible. It's not always possible, but most will make adjustments.
Brilliant. So, I would say what we've said in response to that question, then, as you say, is always best to approach it with a discussion. They're human beings at the end of the day. If you take a human approach, they're going to react better to that. Just open discussion, honest discussion about what the issue is and how the business can support the employee in resolving that issue or arranging the workload so that it can work around that issue.
Absolutely. And also it allows you to deal with top things that you probably would never have known about. When you have some of these meetings, sometimes things come out that you think, oh wow, I didn't even know that was an issue in his life or their life. They may just say to you, at the moment I'm going through something, it's going to be next 2 or 3 weeks, I'm going to struggle on a Friday, like you said, the Friday, but after that everything's going to be fine. Most businesses that I deal with will be like, okay, valued employee, let's look at annual leave, let's look at options, let's look at how we manage this on a short-term basis, or maybe a long-term change, like you said, with adjustments.
Brilliant. So I think that about wraps us up for the episode, really. I think, as you say, key takeaways really is to manage that balance, and it's easier said than done to manage that balance between the needs of the business and the needs of the employee, but take a human approach. Absolutely. So it's really about being supportive while keeping it fair and consistent, without knowing kind of the more specifics of those questions, because obviously these things can go into disability, can go into a whole variety of things. So without knowing the specifics, there's only so much guidance we can actually kind of give on that. But if you have any questions you'd like us to cover in the future, please feel free to send them in. If there's anything kind of more specific that you want us to cover as well, we'll be able to go into more specific guidance on the topic. So whatever your issue, whatever you'd like us to cover, send it into marketing@QuestCover. We'd love to hear from you. And I'm sure Mars would love to have another question thrown his way.
Absolutely.
So, thanks again for tuning in, and keep an eye out for the next episode. That's all for this episode of Heads Up HR. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to follow and share the podcast, and we'll be back soon with more HR updates and insights from QuestCover.